Imagine the scene. Grandparents and grandchildren, whole families together, set out on a train journey. It's a vintage train, full of other families, the journey of a lifetime. And on the way, at each station along the way, they encounter Jesus. Through prayer, games, learning to serve and seek justice, collaborative crafts, eating together, laughing and sharing stories of their journey of faith. What if your church could host a holiday club, bringing together the old and the young to encounter Jesus together? I'm Melanie Cave, Managing Director of Roots, and today I'm speaking with Alison Hulse, who's a Learning and Development Officer for the Methodist Church and longtime writer for Roots. We take a look at the brand new Intergenerational holiday club Alison has written for Roots, hearing the heart behind it and how it can be used on Sundays or midweek to help us all grow in faith and share our journey with others. Thanks for joining us on the Roots for Churches podcast. Here we go. Welcome, Alison, to the Roots for Churches podcast. Great to have you.
Thank you. It is very good to be here.
We are going to talk about something that you've written for Roots, the Journey of a Lifetime Holiday Club. And can you just give us a little bit of background so that the people who are listening to this will know a little bit about you, where you live, what you're up to in your day-to-day?
Great. Yes. So I'm Alison. I work for the Methodist Church as a Learning and Development Officer, and I work as a freelance writer and facilitator. I am based in Liverpool, and I'm part of a faith community called Toast, which is an intergenerational faith community that largely meets outdoors and has people of all ages there. And I have 3 teenagers at home at the moment.
Amazing. Thank you. And you've written for Roots many a year?
Yes, I think I've been there, not quite since day one, but issue 2, I think I wrote for first.
It's incredible. And this latest thing is Journey of a Lifetime is an intergenerational holiday club. So most people will be familiar with holiday clubs, and they think of them as something you do maybe in the summer holidays or half term. Invite your local community, children in your church to come. How is an intergenerational holiday club different?
So this is intentionally intergenerational. So it's intentionally saying we are all on this journey of a lifetime, this journey of discipleship together, and we can learn from each other and grow in our discipleship together, whatever age we are. So from the outset, as we've created this holiday club, we've been intentional about creating spaces where children, young people, adults can all be together and explore the Bible stories together and travel through these spiritual practices that we've woven through together so that we really take seriously that we are intergenerational disciples.
I love it. I think I was at an Intergenerate conference in the US, and someone was sharing about how they have a lot of older people, grandparents in their church, who live far away from their grandchildren. But in the summer, the kids come to visit grandparents and stay for a whole week. And the church thought this is a brilliant opportunity. And so basically started doing the holiday club intentionally intergenerationally to build relationship between the grandparents and the grandchildren. And I think that situation, that demographic is echoed in a lot of churches across the UK, Ireland, Australia. This idea that there are grandparents who are desperate to share faith with their grandchildren. But how do they do that? If they don't live close by or if they're not in the same church, how can they do that? And so I thought it was quite a fun idea to create a holiday club that appeals not just to children, not just to teenagers, but also to some of our older saints. And I think the train theme that we've gone for, this idea of a journey of a lifetime, it really works because it allows some of the people who've been following Jesus for a long time to share some of their stories.
Yes, and it's not just grandparents, is it? It's godparents. It's your next door neighbour who takes the children to church sometimes because you're busy. It's your friends who take them. It's all those people who form the community that we explore our faith in. And we can together explore this train journey, this adventure together and discover a little bit more, because sometimes we don't tell each other our stories of faith. And having that time to sit and talk and share is really important and is really important part of this journey of a lifetime.
And I was at a denominational conference at the weekend and we were talking about it, and they were often saying, oh, that's such a good idea. We have a lunch that we do for our seniors in the church. We already do that. And in the summer, we can invite the young people to come and join in on that lunch because it's already happening. And then we can do this as part of it. Or we already have a holiday club planned, but let's invite the older people in our church to come be part of it. Not necessarily as workers, but as participants. But obviously if they're there and they're able to help out, that's great. But it's actually that we're all learning and sharing together. So I think for some people, This will make our brains bend a little bit. Like, it's not quite how we've thought of holiday club in the past. And so it will take a little bit of like, oh, how does the logistics of this work? How do we do this? We might have under fives crawling on the floor and we have older people who are not so steady on their feet. How can we make this work? But I think there's a bit of that in the instructions of the holiday club. Do you want to just give people some ideas?
Yes. So we've tried to create different points all the way through where we can intergenerationally be together. But we've recognised as well that that's not always that straightforward. So when we come to the Bible story, you hear the Bible story and it's deliberately written to appeal to all ages. But then there are 3 things for everyone to engage with. What's made you smile? What do you have some questions about? And what has surprised you in that story? So what's made you smile? What surprised you, and any questions? So together you can explore that together. We've also recognised that all the activities are suitable for under 5s, but sometimes under 5s just want to do their own thing. So as well as those activities, there are 3 additional activities in each session where the under 5s can independently explore the story if they want a little bit of time doing that as well. So trying to create these different ways to be together. But we've also created things you can take home. So you take your exploration of faith home with you, whether it be a finger labyrinth, whether it be a creative way of praying, and you can carry that on when you get home and explore that with the generations that you were with there, maybe at home with other people as well.
And I think a lot of holiday clubs, we think primary school aged, but families don't always fit with the children neatly in one category or the other. So to include the under 5s content allows a whole family to come together. And you're not trying to shush children to keep them quiet so that the older kids can listen, that there is much more of a tables around the room. There's stations, and we literally talk about train stations quite a lot, but there's stations where you're doing activities and they're happening concurrently. So there's lots of things that you can access, but you don't all have to sit and be quiet and listen for very many points during the session. How do those work?
So at the beginning, you're all introduced to the theme for that particular session. And then you're also introduced to the 5 stations. So there are 4 stations that are based on spiritual practices. They all link into the story. And there you get to explore, whether it be with a game, a craft activity, a prayer activity, you get to explore that particular spiritual practice. And then the 5th station is always a collaborative craft. So that's the journey of a lifetime station where you together create. So each day you create a banner or a poster that tells a little of the journey that you've been on together as you've explored that particular Bible story. So you can move around them as you want. And on the table for each station will be the instructions. So you need people to host the table, but you don't need those great levels of leaders that we very often need for Holiday Club, because people will get involved in their own particular way. They'll read the questions, they'll do as they want, and then there's some reflection questions as well. So if you want to spend a little longer at the table, you can spend longer and reflect on those particular questions.
And are you hoping that families would go around the tables together, or that it'd be a mixture of families, older and younger? Or is there no way to control what will happen?
I think it's up to the fact that each individual, I guess, to work around it as works best for you. Because actually, if you meet somebody who you've not had a chance to talk to before, who's got some really great story about their faith or wants to ask you some questions about your faith, then how brilliant is that? I'm sure lots of us have tales of people who've been really instrumental in our faith development, who are people that we just bumped into because we were sat in coffee after church or because you were waiting for somebody. So to have those questions, those conversations intentionally is really important.
And I think it will take a bit of coaxing or coaching, because I think our default is to talk to people our age. Our default in these settings is like, oh, I'll go sit with people that I already know. But if we're on these table and there are these prompt questions, you can turn to the child next to you and say, tell me about this. Tell me about a time when you were surprised, or tell me what struck you about the story. And it builds those relationships. I think sometimes in our culture, we're a bit awkward about spiritual conversations. And how do we get those started?
Yeah, so that's why the prompt questions are really gentle. They're a really gentle way into those conversations that are about our faith. They're about where we are on our faith journey and what we've discovered about God and how we're excited by that journey with God. So they're very gentle questions, but questions that anyone can access and have a conversation with anyone of any age.
Can you tell me a bit about the Bible content for this? What are the Bible stories that we're looking at?
Okay, there are 3 Bible stories from Luke. So we start with hearing the story of the paralysed man who's taken by his friends and lowered through the roof. The second session then focuses on Mary and Martha and the time that Jesus visits them. And then in the third session, we hear the story of Zacchaeus. And that's our final session as we explore together where we've come on our journey.
And there's full color illustrations. There's beautiful, I'm just flicking the different holiday club illustrations right now. And there's little tickets that you can stamp at each station. And the conversation cards for each table are beautiful printouts, but there's also full color illustrations for these stories. So those could go on a screen, but there's also interactive ways to tell the story.
Yes, so each week there's a different way to tell the story. So there's a junk model story, there's a drama story, plus an under five story. So if you want to tell the story in a different way to under fives, or if you all want to hear the under five story, there's a version of the story that's for under fives. Yeah, and then these beautiful illustrations for those who really visually engage with the story, to be able to engage with the story in that way.
And then there's activity sheets, and there's a take-home sheet called Thrive, which again is a way of consolidating what we've been talking about and allowing those conversations to continue at home. So whether parents and children have come together, or whether they've gone with a grandparent, or they've been dropped off, there's a way for the family to be able to make sense of this and engage and ask helpful questions. So this whole idea that we want our faith to develop in community and in family, not just individual in a sort of siloed, very private way, but actually children really thrive when there's a community of faith around them, a family of faith encouraging that. And we know that isn't possible for everyone, but we're just trying to create those nudges and those prompts so that those conversations can happen and children can explain what they've been learning and their questions to other people.
Yeah, and hopefully this will help families who haven't been able to be there. So I know sometimes my children go somewhere with a friend, and when they come back, I want to hear about it and find out more. And so these prompts, Thrive in the activity sheet, allow them to have those conversations. Because again, I think children and young people need a starter when they get home, a bit like the reflection questions we've got in the session. The Thrive and the activity sheets do the same thing of being able to say, look, this is what I found out today. How about we explore a little bit more together at home and carry on those conversations?
Alison, does running an intergenerational holiday club have any impact on how we do safeguarding?
In some ways, it's very similar to what we're familiar with. It's like a Sunday morning or a messy church or a toddler group where any children and young people who come are the responsibility of the adults that they came with. What you need to think about is if you've got any children and young people coming who aren't with an adult. So you might need a group who have somebody who is DBS checked, a youth worker or a children's worker who goes around with that group and is responsible for those particular children and young people. You're likely to have new people coming into the session. So having some good ground rules at the start is really helpful to make sure everyone's clear. You take your own children to the toilets, that nobody leaves unless the adult they're with knows they're leaving, or that children don't leave without their adult, and that you make clear who your safeguarding person is. Because probably on a Sunday morning, we might know who that person is. But actually for everybody to know, if I need to talk to somebody, if there's something I've got a concern about, this is the person that I can go and talk to. And for that person just to integrate in what's going on so they don't feel like there's somebody that's it's a little bit scary to talk to. But actually it's just, again, one of the community who's there together, and you can go and talk to them if you need to. And making sure then, under all that, we're following our denomination and our particular settings, safeguarding policies, and having a really good conversation with your safeguarding person at the outset so you're all clear, and then it will all fit into place quite well.
I think we do get a bit panicky when we think intergenerational, oh, there's all these adults, there's all these children and they're interacting, but we're like, hang on, we do this every Sunday.
Yeah. We know how to do this. We do know how to do this. We just need to be clear and be clear to people who are coming new to this. So they're also clear that we know how to do this.
Yes. And here's the thing, when you have children moving around a space, you've got these stations, you've got some free play, some self-directed things. It can be hard for a parent or a grandparent who's brought multiple children to keep an eye on all of them. And this is where safeguarding is everybody's responsibility, and you just need the team to be switched on to it, and you need to know the young people as best you can. If you've got a kid who is likely to run away or to escape to a different part of the building, just having your team aware and switched on will mean that those risks can be mitigated. But really, it is a really, really good opportunity, and we don't need to be intimidated by the safeguarding aspect.
No, not at all. And all the adults will have been DBS checked, but importantly, will have done their denomination's training. And so they'll know how to do this and how to create spaces that are safer for everyone and that we can all explore together.
And Can you tell me a little bit more about the spiritual practices? So we said that the 4 of the 5 stations each week, the train stops that you stop at, they are to do with spiritual practices. What are those like?
So the spiritual practices are simply ways of encountering God. So we have taken 12 spiritual practices, and each of the 3 sessions we explore 4 of those. So it might be about thinking how we pray and how we can pray daily and creating something to help us to pray daily. Or it might be thinking about how we challenge injustice or how we worship or how we serve other people. But taking these key ways that we encounter God and that we show our love of God to others as well, and using those as the framework each time. So it might be a craft, it might be a prayer activity, it might be a conversation, but exploring these 4 spiritual practices each time so that we can find ones that we naturally sit with, but also challenge ourselves to think, maybe that's a way I don't explore my faith or I don't encounter God in that particular way. What happens if I explore that a little more? And actually, there's a bit of an excitement in exploring God and encountering God in a new way.
And I think through those, that's where you encounter the stories. That's where you hear intergenerationally, oh, I really enjoy praying like this, or here's a time when I confronted injustice and here's how it went for me. And it prompts those conversations. Again, I think we all have this mindset that other people are just like us, that other people find prayer challenging like us, or other people are naturally wired for advocacy or justice things the same as us. And when you meet somebody whose spiritual journey, whose spiritual pathways are different, you're like, oh, I would have put you down as not very spiritual. But you're like, oh, no, actually, you are. You're just very different to me. And maybe I need to step into that. And I think as adults, we can sometimes, I don't think we do it maliciously, but we can, put onto young people, their faith needs to look like ours, or their faith needs to look in a particular way. And I think children often surprise us by how spiritual they are. And they do pick up some of these practices intuitively or naturally, but it's helpful to name them, articulate them, and push into them.
Yeah, and it can be really inspiring because actually, if you hear a 5-year-old telling you about how they've encountered God outdoors, and actually you're not somebody who normally encounters God outdoors, maybe that's going to inspire you to think, actually, maybe I'll give that a try and see what happens. Because we become a bit narrow sometimes as adults in how we explore our faith because we know that works and I know I'm comfortable there. But what happens actually if we push the boundaries, and having children and young people help us in doing that could be really exciting.
I've heard people say that when they go through really hard seasons, maybe grief or dementia or illness, that often their spiritual pathways change. That the thing that they did before, maybe they read their Bible a lot, now they're leaning into worship and they just find that they need the presence of God through worship songs all the time. Or maybe, their walk outside becomes very prayerful, whereas before it was just exercise. So different life stages can lead us into these different spiritual disciplines. The Methodist way of life, this is a way that the Methodist Church has pulled together these spiritual disciplines, these spiritual pathways, and they very helpfully did quite a lot of work framing all of this, writing all of this, and we've adapted that to work for children, young people, intergenerationally. I want to say a big thank you to the Methodist Church, but also to say, if you're not Methodist, these spiritual disciplines are not unique to the Methodists.
No, all the Methodist Church has done is taken them and formed them into the Methodist way of life, into these 12 spiritual practices. But they are 12 spiritual practices that work whatever denomination you are and whatever your background is.
Yeah.
They are not unique to the Methodist Church. And we're really excited that everyone's getting to explore these together.
Definitely. These spiritual practices have been around nearly as long as the Christian church. And it's just a way of framing them and shaping them. But there's some really helpful work that's gone on there about thinking about different ways that all of us can encounter God. So I think there's something really rich for people. So, you might have heard those Bible stories before. If you've been in Sunday school, if you've been in church for a while, you're like, yes, I know about Zacchaeus. Yes, I know about Mary and Martha. But pairing it with these spiritual disciplines, these spiritual pathways, I think brings a really fresh take and allows those who have been around church for a long time to meet with those who are brand new to it and both learn and encounter together. Can you tell me a bit about holiday clubs? I know that you've been involved in a fair few. What's the impact of a holiday club on a child and then on a church community?
When I think back, the impact on me as a child was huge. So I used to go to the United Reformed Church's holiday club. I can see myself in that space still. And there was something freeing about being able to explore in a new and exciting, creative way in the middle of the holidays, so that when I then as an adult was invited to lead holiday clubs, I straight away could find that space again and think, yeah, this was really important to me. But what happens to the children and young people that I work with in holiday clubs? And having the privilege of watching the child who comes in on Monday morning thinking, this is just childcare my mum's giving me and I'm really grumpy and I don't want to be here. And by Friday is just full of the joys of it and has asked you some really challenging questions. And as a leader in Holiday Club, I think sometimes you are asked the most difficult questions because the children and young people are really grappling with their faith, and that is brilliant. And to say to them, I don't maybe know the answer to that question, but let's explore that together, has been a real privilege when leading holiday clubs. And also to see the journey that the leaders go on. Because again, I think people sign up to lead a holiday club thinking, oh, that'll be a really great thing to do, and don't notice the impact it's going to have on their own faith journey. Because you can't help but when you're in a room full of children and young people who are grappling with these stories and with the excitement of a journey of faith, you can't help but be impacted yourself. And it really be a challenge to your discipleship and a new step for you. So I'm hoping that all that we've had over the years in holiday clubs that traditionally been for children led by adults, that actually when we mix everyone together as participants, that we can really tap into that journey of exploration together.
And that's one of the values of intergenerational ministry, is that instead of it just being sort of adult to child, all the information, the knowledge, the learning flows from the adult who has more experience to the child who does not know as much. We're actually sort of saying, yes, there may be more experience. Yes, there may be more Bible knowledge, but there is something to be learned from the enthusiasm, from the insight, from the Holy Spirit that is in these children and young people, that we actually can all learn, and learning side by side models humility, and but also that we're galvanized in relationship. There's just a lot going on there. And I think for people who maybe this might be a first experience of intergenerational, it's kind of going into it with an open mind of saying, I'm used to a sort of Sunday school setting where the adult is teaching and the children are gaining knowledge. But what can I learn as an adult? How can I learn to know this young person and see what God's up to in their journey? And how can I be challenged through that? That humility, that relational posture, I think does something really unique and really powerful. And once you've kind of tasted it, taste and see, you get the bug for it and you're like, I want to do more of this.
Yeah, so I'm part of an intergenerational community, as I said, and so I see this happen. But you do have to take a particular posture. You do have to say, I'm here to learn and grow just as much as the 5-year-old, as the 14-year-old. We're all here together. But something really exciting happens when we can all take that step back and say, actually, let's do this together, rather than as an adult feeling that, yeah, I know more Bible stories than you, or I've explored this a little bit more. Actually, if we take that step back, we're all going to learn. And it is really exciting.
And I think sometimes we can reduce discipleship or formation to learning knowledge. Like, do I know the Bible story? Do I know what it means? But these spiritual practices, I think, are a great leveler. Like, yes, we might know how to pray, but are we doing it? Or we might know that we should be involved in championing justice, but like, are we actually doing it? Where are we putting our faith into action? And by exploring that with other people, there's an accountability. Instead of it just being a knowledge transfer or like these are the right things to do tick box, it's actually some conversations of like, yeah, I know I should be doing this and I find it hard, or this is the areas where I have questions, or this is where I back off because I'm not sure. And allowing those questions to come up in conversation with younger people, with older people, I think is really healthy for us, because yes, there is something about learning in our discipleship. We do need to learn about God. We do need to learn about the scripture. But I think there's something about encountering and being transformed that is as important, if not more important. And I think that's where that posture of humility that happens in intergenerational is really, really powerful.
Yeah, and we've tried to build that encounter opportunity. And that's why at the end of each time you hear the story, we ask you what's made you smile, what surprised you, have you got any questions? And that isn't a question that we're just asking to the children. That's a question we're asking to everybody, because we want everybody to recognise that you might have heard this story 50, 60, probably a lot more times. But actually, have you still got any questions? Is there still something that surprises you or makes you smile? And that's great if it is. And let's hear those together and take that posture of almost coming new to the story and seeing it in a new way.
What would you like to see as the fruit of this writing that you've done, this holiday club? What are your hopes for churches that use it?
I think my hope is that community forms. And in that sense, that if we grow our faith in community, actually there's a strength and a breadth to it. And that we start to create within our churches places where we have these conversations, where it's quite natural to hear the stories together, where it's quite natural to think, oh, actually, thinking about these spiritual practices, but I'm going to do it with this group of people. And that we really create that sense of exploring our faith in community, because actually it does take a community to strengthen our faith and to hold us. And I really hope that having this opportunity to explore intentionally will really strengthen churches as they move forward to continue those conversations up, building that community of faith together.
So it's everything you need to run this holiday club. So there's posters, there's invitations, there's all the printouts, all the crafts, all the Thrive take-home sheets. Everything is there, and it's downloadable. If you have a Roots subscription, you can have it as part of your subscription. If you don't have a Roots subscription, you can head to our Shopify store and you can download it from there. But let's give people some ideas of how they might practically use this holiday club. What might it look like in some different churches? When would they do this?
So it's very flexible. You could decide, actually, we're going to take 3 of the Sundays during the summer holidays and we're going to run it across the 3 Sundays. It's a 2-hour session, so you could fit that into your Sunday morning. Or you might say, we're going to do it as 3 days. We're going to put them together and run it as 3 days or as 3 late afternoon sessions. It's very flexible to work with whatever works for a particular church, and about finding the time that works for your community. Because there's nothing worse than setting up a holiday activity and realizing you've clashed with something else that's really big, or you've chosen just completely the wrong time. So think about your community. Where is the best place for this to sit, and fit it into that time? And then try and find a time afterwards to bring people together, to have a kind of final gathering. Now, traditionally in a holiday club, that's often a Sunday service or an evening meal or barbecue where you gather together and you hear what the children have been up to. Well, actually now, hopefully you've been up to all that together. So it's a chance to meet and maybe explore some of those spiritual practices together. But just to add a little element to the holiday club that says we've been on this journey of a lifetime together. Let's pause and now let's continue on the journey together.
I like that. And I think there is also something about sharing the vision for this with the whole community. So quite often, holiday club might come under the remit of the children's worker or the community worker, as seen as an outreach, or maybe, this is a way that we're going to help our children and young people move forward in their faith. But if you start sharing this with some of the older people in your congregation, some of the adults and parents, and said, this is a way to do family discipleship. This is a way to do grandparenting for faith. This is a way to connect with your neighbors. Who could you invite? When would it work? How would that? When people start to capture a vision of what could this be? Again, maybe the times that you think, this is when we normally do our holiday club, maybe those get a little bit flexible and you think, well, actually, how can we invite people who wouldn't normally get to this? And we can do this intergenerationally. So I think it is taking the holiday and bending the boundaries a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Because we've all been in churches where we do something because we've always done it at that time. Actually now, if we're looking at a new way of being holiday club, let's throw that out the window and think what actually works best for this community in this place and when is the best time for us.
And I was talking to Alex, who runs Faith in Later Life. She says summertime can be actually quite lonely for older people. That people go on holiday, the clubs or the hobby groups that they go to, they might stop for a break in the summer. And actually there's less going on for older people in the summer. They have the benefit of going on holiday themselves when things are cheaper and not during the school holidays. So they actually are around during those summer weeks. So making sure that our churches really do think about those on the older end of the church spectrum as much as we think about reaching out to the younger ones. Is there a care home? Is there an older people's lunch that happens? Could they be incorporated and involved in this? Because as you've written it really beautifully, it can incorporate the entire age spectrum. And I just think there is so much mission field there. And the beauty of this, I think people are familiar with that idea. There was it 4-year-olds in an old people's home? There was
Yes.
I don't remember exactly what the title of the program was, but how beneficial it was for the people who were in this elderly care home to interact with the young people. And I know that there's just been so much research around this of the benefit to both ends of the spectrum of being in contact with each other, just socially, relationally, but also spiritually. And so just want to sort of nudge us to think and pray and imagine what could be and how could we bring those groups together? Because historically the church does things like put the kids in a separate room or a separate Sunday school class, and those groups, or maybe even the older people come midweek or they come to the very early service and they don't necessarily get to interact. And those relationships are really rich.
Yeah, and if I look back on my first journey, At the time, I would have probably said to you, oh, I want to be with my friends and the people of my age. But when I look back, actually, I spent a lot of time with people who were very different ages to me. And they had a huge impact on my faith journey. And because it would just happen naturally, and because the church community created spaces for me to do that, I didn't really notice. And it's only when I look back, I think I was in what we would now call an intergenerational community. And those people helped my faith to grow and develop. Let's try and create those spaces for that to happen.
I think the church is one of the only places in our culture that is truly intergenerational anymore. And not every church is doing that. But I think there's a lot of people subscribing to Roots, a lot of people passionate and interested in this area. And this is just another way to have a stab at that, to try some things and see how it goes and see what relationships form. So thank you, Alison, for your writing, for your experience, for your creativity. It's a beautiful holiday club. Very proud of it. And I will definitely put links so that people can find it and have a little look through. But thank you so much for your time and for sharing the vision behind it.
Thank you. It's been great to be here.
Roots is committed to helping you lead great church. Church that's growing, relevant, engaging, authentic, and together. As well as weekly content for worship and learning, we offer seasonal and outreach resources, helping you celebrate and connect with your community. As well as Easter and nativity trails, we have a wide range of holiday clubs, from 2 sessions to 6. If you already subscribe to Roots, you have access to them all. Just head to Seasons and Festivals and click on the summer holidays and you'll find it. But you can also purchase our holiday clubs as standalone PDFs. Check the show notes for links to our web shop or Google Roots for Churches and Shopify, and you'll find links to buy them. If you found this episode helpful, please subscribe, share it with your friends and network, and leave us a review so that others can find it. Together, we can grow.